Gosh, June's almost over with. Can you believe it?
June 25th, 2012, Mike Green sector of Juneau Beach.
Yeah. So at this sector on Juneau Beach, the main assault element is the Royal Winnipeg Rifles. And the area where we are now, Mike Green sector, this is Mike Green. We're near the town of Courcelles-sur-Mer at the mouth of the Sault River, where it enters into the Bay of the Seine, or the English Channel if you prefer to call it that. You had number 10 platoon of B Company Royal Winnipeg Rifles that had to move up, advance off of the beach, across the sand dunes, and move over and assault directly down the length of the Sault River just beyond the dunes here where we park. And as number 10 platoon of B Company did that, they encountered this fighting position. And this is a German 677 casemate for an 88mm anti-tank gun. So in other words, the weapon inside this casemate was what I would consider Germany's most potent anti-tank, most potent tank-killing weapon. And the weapon was situated just as the bunker sits now. The bunker is leaned over as sand is eroded out from under it, which is why it's at this kind of this intense angle.
It's heavy.
Yeah, it's heavy. It's concrete. It's several 100,000 pounds of concrete. But it used to be level, and you'll notice that it's situated facing to the west. It's facing down the length of this beach, because let's just step out here. The reason that they would position this very large bunker with their biggest weapon in it is because you get this magnificent field of fire. And with the weapon inside that bunker, basically everything that's in view here, and you'll notice that it comes down to a point that's about, 2 miles away? And then the point kind of rolls around. The weapon inside that battery could easily knock out any vehicle that you see on the beach in this landing area.
Within a 2-mile range.
This weapon actually has a greater range than that.
But for this location.
For this location, it was actually a direct point and shoot kind of thing. They were placing direct fire. They weren't even necessarily having to calculate firing angles, plunging fire to account.
From where were they sighting? Directly from the gun battery?
They would sight from the battery. In fact, they had an optical sight on the weapon itself that was like a scope mounted on the weapon. And they would just put the crosshairs directly on whatever they see. It's not like a long-range battery like Pointe du Hoc or the battery at Brecourt Manor or anything like that, where they needed an observer far downrange because they're firing shots that plunge down on the target. This is direct fire.
And location-wise, we're about how many miles west from Omaha Beach?
So Omaha Beach is
east, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Omaha Beach is west that way.
Right.
So we're to the east of it. Omaha Beach is west that way by about 10 miles.
Okay.
So that way 10 miles is the town of Port-en-Bessin, which is that marks the far eastern boundary of Omaha Beach. And so then way off in the distance there, probably 25 miles away, is Utah Beach. But we're at Juneau, so we're technically in the center of the invasion area. And then off in this direction, off to the east,
Gold.
you have Swords down there. Gold Beach would be down this way.
Got it.
So Swords down here, we go past the mouth of the Courcelles River. You get to Sword Beach. You get Duvila-de-Livronde. You get Montgomery, Colville-Montgomery. You get a few of the Ouistreham and Riva Bella, the towns that are kind of well known for their association with the British 3rd Infantry Division landings on Sword. And then you get the mouth of the Orne River and the Caen Canal, and off in the distance you can actually see it. You can see the landmass way off there in the distance. That's at the Havre.
Yep.
So the mouth of the Seine River is just about 30 miles that way.
Yep.
And people often forget this, and it's, I think, an often overlooked fact that if you rank the beaches from worst to best, and when I say worst meaning highest loss of life, it goes, by far the worst was Omaha. Dog Green sector of Omaha specifically. The second worst was right here, the Mike Green sector of Juneau. The Canadians...
Not many people know that.
Not many people realize it, but this was where, when you consider the casualties here, they suffered 379 killed on this beach, trying to enforce this beach.
How many men were part of the invasion, Canadians?
Canadian forces, it's a full infantry brigade and a full armored brigade, and so you've got a force numbering approaching 20,000 men. It's also in this sector, I should point out, that the Poles and the Czechs land. The Poles and the Czechs both have a full brigade that they send into combat, which accounts for the Poles and the Czechs that were buried in the cemetery at Bayeux that we saw last night. But the Canadians suffer intense casualties on this beach. Intense, second only to Omaha Beach, where we lose, it's estimated that we lose 800 killed on Omaha. Here they'd get 379 killed, so they're almost half as bad as Omaha Beach.
But why? Because this is relatively flat compared to Omaha with everything up on Omaha.
Yeah, with Omaha where you have bluffs and you have
Right.
the enemy has the ability to get height above the target. Here you've just got too much open field of fire. And in addition to that, this is an area where the Germans would orient these Widerstandsnest, these resistance points. Technically, Kosi's bunker, we're a part of a strong point, a resistance nest or a Widerstandsnest that stretches all the way to the mouth of the Soul River that you can see just down there. And at the mouth of the Soul River, you'll see even more bunkers like this. This was one complex defending the mouth of that river.
Does this have a WM designation?
It does. This would be WN 54.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the number started at WN 1, way down at the other end of Sword, and they progress all the way.
The last one
moving
being
to the west, WN 72, which is on Omaha, and technically WN 73 was Point de Hoc. But you get some of these that it's a single bunker, like WN 65 at the Rouquette River Valley at the E1 draw in Omaha.
And we had all these, I mean, we knew all of these locations coming in, did we not?
We did. We totally knew. We were flying high-speed aerial photo reconnaissance missions over these beaches for a year before the invasion. We knew where everything was. However, there was the assumption that the tank infantry team would work, that by landing armored forces along with the infantry, the armored forces would be able to suppress the fire of weapons like this and make it possible for the infantry to move into the interior. But you end up with complications here just as you do with complications at Omaha Beach.
Yeah.
Probably the most famous story at Omaha is the 741st Tank Battalion, supposed to get 32 tanks on the beach, 27 of them are lost offshore. The ones that make it to the beach are brought all the way in by their landing craft. They don't actually swim ashore as they were supposed to. Here you have the cases of vehicles that are landing down in this area that are coming under the direct fire of the 88 millimeter gun in Kosi's battery, or Kosi's bunker. And then you might be able to notice it down there. That's at Luxembourg. You can see there is a case-made bunker.
I can see it.
What's that? 2 miles away, maybe a mile and a half away.
Sure.
Maybe not even that much.
Yeah, I don't think it's that.
But that weapon is oriented firing back toward the east. So these two weapons are actually, their fields of fire are toward one another.
And that's why it was in Beerville.
That's right.
There's some that are across.
Right, and they're weapons of different calibers that are there to do very different things. Like the 88 millimeter gun here is designed to be able to knock out any small boat or tank that's within this field of fire. The 75 millimeter gun that was there could knock out just about anything. It's not quite as powerful as the 88 in Kosi's bunker, but it's still an extremely powerful weapon. That was that weapon I pointed out to you last night in the museum in Bayeux, the PAC 40 75 millimeter gun.
What was the effective range of an 88?
This weapon here, this was the PAC 88, the Panzerabwehrkanone anti-tank gun 88. That weapon could easily penetrate the standard armor of a Sherman tank at 7,000 yards, 8,000 yards.
Over a mile.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that at that point is what?
Yeah, 1,700
That's
yards
4 miles?
Yeah,
Almost
1,728 yards in a mile.
Got it.
Yeah. So an extraordinarily powerful weapon. And again, 88 millimeter projectile, about that big in diameter, about almost 4 inches in diameter. Weighing a projectile itself, weighing 32 pounds, traveling at just about 3,000 feet per second with an explosive payload of 5 pounds of high explosive. There was really no armor that we had that could deflect that round. That's why that round is so infamous. And there are 3 types of 88 during the war. There's this type of 88, which is the PAC 88 anti-tank gun, Panzerabwehrkanone. Then there was the U-boat 88. You'll see that they have 88 millimeter deck guns. And then there's the famous Flak 88, the Flugzeugabwehrkanone, anti-aircraft gun. And the funny thing is that they're all 3 88s, but the ammunition for all 3 guns is completely different, and you can't use one in another type of gun.
Well, that's okay. So you anticipated my question. So there was not a sort of economy of scale, so to speak, with this. I mean,
3 very, very different
What
rounds.
kind of height would a Flak 88 go?
Flak 88 round could put the round up to
25,000 feet.
25,000 feet.
That's right. I figured 25,000.
And they could set them, they could dial them to
different.
explode at different altitudes. They could even dial it out to infinity so that it would explode only on contact. If you look off in the distance there, you can see the ferry going to Portsmouth.